Hello, everybody. Welcome back to episode 86 of the Podcana podcast. This week, we're going to be discussing the dual ink cards that were finally revealed. We've been theorizing about this for quite some time, but now we know that it is official information. We have, I think, 6 new cards to discuss in this episode. Those are the cards that have been revealed so far. And another big topic we're going to be discussing is DLC Melbourne, which is taking place this weekend, which maybe some folks will have forgotten about, but it's a pretty significant event for the folks down in the Oceania region. I'm pretty excited to see how that's going to go for the first major event down there. Before we jump into it, as usual, I have to give a huge shout out to our sponsor, Heavy Play. Heavy Play are known for making their incredible curved card sleeves that have rounded corners at one end of the sleeve. Never again will you accidentally shuffle cards upside down into your deck. Their EquipMag system connects their Playmat, Deckbox, and Dicebox, so no more rolling with your Playmat and rushing to your next table. Easy magnetic connection system for easy transport around locals and tournaments. Be sure to use code PODCANA to save yourself 10% at checkout, and use our link down below in the video description. Thank you once again to Heavy Play for sponsoring this episode. So, starting things off, Brendan and Moyen. What do you think?
What, 3 weeks in a row? What the fuck?
Yeah, he's back. What
do we think about Duel Links?
Yeah, what do you think?
First of all, I really like the card templating. I think it looks really good. It kind of sounds like a small point, but I think they executed it well. I've definitely seen other games that have done, whether it's their hybrid cards or something like that, their gold cards, and I haven't liked it, but I thought all these cards are and immediately drew my attention. Yeah, it's cool. It's what we talked about. We have to really dive in and look at each card to see if it sort of satisfied the criteria that we were looking to meet. And that was, just to reiterate, if you didn't listen to last week's podcast, we were talking about sort of these ink color combinations that would, potentially fall short, and being able to put cards in those ink combinations specifically that would help boost them up. So the problem is okay, let's say Sapphire Emerald, to pick on that ink combination. It has its problems. And a problem on top of that is that if you print a good Sapphire card, you print a good Emerald card, oftentimes it's going to go into Emerald Steel or Ruby Sapphire or anything like that. Just kind of floats to the top. So that's really what I would like to see out of these dual ink cards, is help them sort of shore up some of the issues that ink combinations have, but also maybe just have these super flavorful cards that really speak to the identity of these ink combinations.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. To me, it's one really, as you said, help out the weaker ink combinations that aren't really inherently synergistic, but also just give the player exciting reasons to really try to build certain ink combinations a certain way, add some flavor, add some identity. So I think there's a lot of good that can be done with the mechanic that is dual ink cards.
Mm-hmm.
But for that to be the case, those cards need to be interesting and powerful without being game breaking. So it's kind of a sweet spot to find, I think, and I hope they manage to do just that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I agree. And I do also want to have the conversation. It's a conversation that many people have been having within the community so far of how will these dual ink cards work? Of course, it hasn't been specified by Ravensburger so far, but can you play a Ruby Sapphire card in any Ruby deck, any Sapphire deck, or does it have to be just a Ruby Sapphire deck? My money is still on it has to be a Ruby Sapphire deck, because that just meets the traditional deck building requirements of the game, where you can only have a deck with 2 ink combinations. So technically, if you played a Ruby Sapphire deck in a Ruby Sapphire card within a Ruby Amethyst deck, that's technically 3 inks. Potentially, especially with how it's printed on the card. That's how it kind of seems to me. So, I mean, we will discuss that, but I think, at least in my opinion, that's how it's going to be formatted, is you can only play a Ruby Sapphire card within a Ruby Sapphire deck. What are your guys' thoughts on it, briefly?
I think logically, without any context of Lorcana, I think either or makes sense. Okay, if you have steel in your deck, you could play the steel Amethyst card. Adding context into that, the context of how Lorcana works, how it's designed, I also strongly agree that I think they will only be able to be played in the ink combinations that they are representing. So a steel Amethyst card will only be able to be played in steel Amethyst.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I'm a fan of that, by the way. I think that's how it should be too.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's also to me, it's just if I haven't thought this too, but I feel like from all the possible ink combinations that you can play, if the requirement is only to play one of those two colors from a dual ink card, suddenly it's playable in like a lot of the ink combinations, which I think. I mean, I guess it has some merit to it as well, where you can say, okay, this is like a card that's a lot more flexible. Of course, then it would need to be lower, not higher power level, as we discussed earlier. But I think on top of that, imagine. I think also I just thought of like one reason I hadn't thought of before why I think it would be an issue if they could be played in either or of those ink colors, which is what if you play face against the deck and like they're playing all these dual ink cards and then like when do they specify what are the actual colors that are the ones that they're playing in their deck? It's like, okay, I could see all the colors on the dual inks. Maybe at some point we have like a full deck of dual inks, if that would be the case. So I think even just like mechanically, it kind of makes more sense.
That's a really good point. I don't think that's
a full deck of dual links. Yeah, I think that kind of rules it out.
Thought about that. Yeah, because you're just gonna put down all of the dual link cards together and say I'm playing every color. But and it's it also means that like if that were to be the ruling, then basically you're not playing with 2 inks anymore. You are playing with like 4, 5, potentially all 6 ink combinations.
I feel confident. I would say I feel confident it's gonna be gonna be just the.
It's like people always say, it's not been confirmed. People also said that when we even were speculating about the dual links, maybe it's just out of thin air. And like, of course it wasn't guaranteed, but I think with this one even more so than just dual ink cards existing in the first place. I think I couldn't really imagine it being any other way.
Before we dive into the cards, I am going to briefly jump into the spilled ink section. So we're not taking any comments from the previous video because unfortunately there wasn't too many. So if you guys want to ask us questions, feel free to hit us up in the comments. But these questions are coming from our Discord. So you can also type in some questions within the spilled ink section within our Discord server. The first one is from Mark. They say, went to set champs at our LGS with a homebrew Ruby Steel and didn't do as well as I hoped. Went 2-3. Do you all think that it's probably better to bring a copy do you all think it's probably better to bring a copy of a deck that did well at a big event, for example, EU or NA champs, rather than a homebrew if you want to finish well? I don't think that's always the case, but
I mean, there's a simple yes there. I'm sorry, like that's just,
sure, okay.
Yeah. I mean, play whatever you want, but like the answer to the question is yes.
Okay. But it's not for the reason that your homebrew deck can't be good, right? It's just it's especially okay. So very early in the set, there's much better chances to do well with something you cook up, right? But now, if something hasn't performed at a tournament, that's a lot of people must have slept on something that only you were able to find. So it's like the chances go lower and lower that there's actually something undiscovered that gives you as good of a chance as maybe the decks that have already established themselves. So it's just a risk that you're taking, which doesn't have the biggest like EV in terms of winning chances of paying off. But if you are like enjoying the deck that you cooked up and it's like at least comparable to what the other decks are doing and gives you like a decent enough shot of winning, like I think that's fine, but it will never like be the maximizing EV play usually.
There's also the difference of like, for example, let's take Spessy for example, right? Spessy likes to win with unconventional decks, but that's kind of his goal.
Win anything?
I mean, yeah, but what I'm saying is, it's also, what does finishing well mean to you, right? Does finishing well mean winning the tournament? Does finishing well mean getting a scar? Because I think you could get a scar with a homebrew deck quite easily, in my opinion. It also depends on what your local meta is, how many competitive players are there. But yeah, I mean, it's also determining, like, do you want to actually win the event, or do you want to just try and grab a scar? And like Moyen said, it's like, you have to strike that balance. Like, you at the end of the day, you're playing one of the most competitive events at a local level. So, you're trying to strike a balance between fun and competitiveness. So maybe try and find the deck that you've seen has performed well previously, then maybe try and make some tweaks to it, and then you can do well. Like, I mean, obviously, you tried this Ruby Steel deck, didn't do too well. If you look at the stats, how many Ruby Steel decks have traditionally won tournaments and performed well? Not too many. So by that logic, it means, like you said, Moyen, many people have probably tried this combination already and also have not found success with it.
So yeah. I think the phrasing of this question is actually important. So what do you think is better? I think it's better too. So just from a pure data perspective, like agnostic of any context or any deck building prowess, like you're looking at a large sample size of decks that have been tried and tested through a large sample size of matches that have floated to the top, and you can either select from that that sample set of data, or you can have this internal set of data that goes against the grain that you are now going to evaluate and take to the tournament. I think you're more likely to be successful if you're basically looking at top decks and decking top decks. Is that end all be all? This is the best strategy. This is how you win. This is how you win major tournament. No, definitely not. But when you ask the question, is it better? You can't really say it's better, but it is more likely to be better if you take this approach than if you take the other.
Right.
And all of this is completely unrelated to fun, which is a whole other equation you can slap on top of this. But in terms of, if you're like, do you think it's better? I think it's more likely to be better if you look at tournament performances, top decks, and then you take from there rather than trying to, build something on your own. If your goal is to maximize winning.
Right. I mean, the other angle of this is we already had the two biggest tournaments of Lorcana history this set. They were both played this set, and none of the almost 200 participants of either continentals decided to play Ruby Steel. So,
well, I think one did actually. I think there was an error.
A mistake,
yeah,
right? Yeah,
I know. Yeah. That was about as close as you get. Is there was a data entry error?
Yeah, everyone kept looking for the deck, and it never existed.
Yeah,
I know. But yeah, there's a lot more that goes into this question, and it's dynamic based off what kind of event you're going to. But I would say, in almost every case, you are more likely to do well than if you do the opposite. But it's never guaranteed. So that's where the human element comes in, is where you make that judgment on when it's time for you to go against the grain and build your own deck.
The next comment is from Sasquatch. They say, with all the current changes coming up and your previous comments on communication, I'd like to see where you all stand on the subject. Personally, though, I do enjoy the new previews and cards. I find it almost contradicting. Still barely any Worlds information, but both set 9 and preview cards already. Also, how do you all feel about the tournament structure changes? So the first thing I want to say is it was really weird, and I'm really curious as to if it was done like this, but they basically said, they made a tweet or an announcement saying, set 7 card reveals starting February 10th. And then on the Ravensburger asset site where it has all of the stuff you can pull from, suddenly there were images of Duel Link cards and the Starter Deck cards. When you go to that site, you couldn't access those images anymore, but they're already, of course, all over the internet. So my thought is, okay, either this was a leak or a mistake, right? A mistake. And then they say, right, everyone's seen this already. We have to start revealing this stuff. But in every tweet, they keep showing off more Duel Link cards and saying, card reveal starting on February 10th. So I'm like, what? The general community card reveals start on February 10th?
Probably, yeah. That's probably what it is.
But it's just weird. It's why say card reveals start on this date when you're already revealing cards?
Fab does that too, actually. So Flesh and Blood does that exact same thing. So it's community card reveals. So it's just reminding me of something, because you were mentioning in last week's video there wasn't too many. There were some comments that stood out to me.
Okay, yeah,
One of which was, it was in regards to the Worlds late announcement. Because when we talk about Worlds being late, yeah, it's annoying, but okay, is it worse? On a scale of how much worse is it getting for how late it is and how short notice it is, and what are the actual effects of this? Someone mentioned Walt Disney World is basically going to be booked up and the prices are going to be insane. Which that's a legit that sucks. I didn't really think about it like that. I'm not a Walt Disney connoisseur, but after seeing Disneyland and how that kind of works, I can imagine that if you're trying to late notice book a trip to Walt Disney World, it's going to be ridiculous.
Yeah. No, I agree for sure.
Another one. Podcana, January 23rd, 2023. 1 year anniversary.
Oh, yeah. That was
the
actually
logo.
a big one. Brandon loved the
logo.
There's a Twitter account that does Lorcana history, and we were featured on that. Yeah.
I love TCG history. That's why it's one of the things I like about Magic is it has almost 30 years of history, and it's just, you can get lost in it. And it's cool that someone is, in a sense, even in a rudimentary set, archiving what was the history and what was the early days of Lorcana, because it's really easy to lose all of that. When we were nostalgically reminiscing, we're back in the days where we used to watch Savige on the stream. And
when we had nostalgia time. Yeah.
Dude, there's I bet there's, I don't know how many, but a significant amount of Lorcana players have no idea that ever existed. Or maybe they know it existed, but they weren't there for that era. You know, it's like a different era.
Yeah. I also do like I've seen a lot of like actually I do want to point out a video I saw on social media which I have to say maybe I found kind of funny, but maybe I shouldn't laugh. I mean, people can do what they want, but there's a lot of videos going around of, you know, people showing off their set 1 decks in Japan and China right now, because obviously set 1 has just come out within that region.
Wait, I didn't even know that. Please wait.
Slow
down, back it up.
What?
Yeah, tell me this. What? Yeah, did not.
Okay, so it's been available in China since the very beginning of January. It became available in Japan, I want to say last week, literally last Friday.
Yeah.
And there's also quite funny videos because there's people that play the game and there's people who just rip open packs, right? So there's videos of people ripping open packs, and as soon as they pull like a Gantu or a Taka, they literally have a scissors and they're just cutting the card up because it is, I suppose, bad to them. And yeah, again, like, you know, people can buy cards, people can do what they want with them, they can use them, they can, I don't know.
So I have to inquire. So it's an asymmetric release. Are they spacing it out like
they're
same?
They're speeding it up. So
cadence?
Yeah. Okay. So their goal is to have get the APAC region to eventually catch up to the global releases. And at the moment, I think they're doing, you know, I think they said Rise of Bloodborne is going to come out in March for China and Japan, and then they're going to do maybe every 2-3 months roughly for product stuff. Sort
of those regions being back in set 1, set 2, those are the days that me and Moyne were cooking some spice back then. I wonder if they're going to find the old decks. Evasives in set 1, no longer will it be up for debate. I think we closed out set 1 and people were still like, I don't know about these evasives. Dude, those were fucking Pongo. Dude, you throw Pongo in your Ruby Amethyst deck,
yeah,
you're winning every set 1. Everything, every tournament. I want to see the evasive terror.
You don't need to boom loop, just go evasives.
Oh my god, don't even remind me. I was like, oh man, there was this. That's a throwback. That's a throwback. There was like this ideological war that went on between the real card gamers and these people that would loop their deck with brooms and lose.
Isn't this
game.
when there was actually debate where people were like, oh, maybe we do run 68 card decks and stuff, wasn't it?
For sure. People were running like 70, 80.
Yeah.
I mean, in that matter, it's probably the most plausible it has ever been. Because like you were like fatiguing a lot, at least before you were playing like all the evasives to not do that. But like before the evasives were added, the normal 60 card deck would just get fatigued by the boom loop. That's why the evasives then stepped in.
So then there was the responses like, I'm just gonna have a bigger deck and I'm gonna have more brooms to loop, and it was. The decks became so bad and so inefficient that it was just like, okay, I'll just play a 4-cost evasive that turns sideways, and oh yeah, you lose the game. What?
Like, so those decks were like a little bit worse against like the other decks in the format, because you also needed to not lose to aggro, and that was pretty difficult because your turn 2 was Magic Mirror, your turn 2 3-cost Maleficent, and then turn 4 Think Friends, activate the Magic Mirror or whatever it was called to draw a card.
Pay 4 to activate the Magic Mirror. Yeah. Man.
And then
I think our first video that featured you, Moyen, was the Amber Steel deck guide with Grandmaster Moyen. That's what it was.
Grandmaster?
Yeah.
You talking about Grandmaster Hearthstone player, Moyen?
Yeah. Our first official guest on the podcast, I think, right?
Moyen was on the podcast. He was on the YouTube podcast like 4 or 5 times. He's like, by the way, Brendan, I was not a Grandmaster.
I mean, I think every time you called me a Grandmaster.
But then you became a Grandmaster on Pixelborn, so, revisionist history, just like, nobody knows.
This is literally just turning into... So Podcana is just... Can we call it Podstalgia? This is literally just nostalgia of Lorcana.
This episode.
Yeah.
But with a lot of news as well.
Yeah, but anyways, yes, Brendan, if you again, I can't believe you didn't know this, but yeah, Japan, China releases, so that's going on at the moment. I did see somebody have a funny like blue steel deck back when I don't think blue steel was that playable in set 1, but hey, maybe I'm wrong.
I can't even blue steel in set 1.
Yeah, it had like Donald Ducks and other stuff, but
no, it was playable in set 1. Sapphire Emerald. That was a playable deck.
Sapphire Emerald?
Yes, it was the Ward deck. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sapphire was also kind of okay.
Amber Sapphire was okay. Yeah, you got the buddy.
Yeah,
anyway,
sure.
I want to go back to the question because we can talk about the history of Lorcana the whole time. But yeah, what's their thoughts on no information for Worlds? They already have set 9 previews and stuff like that. And then also, how do you feel about the tournament structure changes? Do you know what they're referring to here necessarily?
The one thing that
I
I
didn't know the
did
game was being
hear.
released in Japan.
So the only thing that I did hear about structure changes was I don't know, but I've heard that there's no longer like a one-up mat or something for set jumps.
Actually, oh my god, I forgot to include an entire topic in here. We can breeze over it. I'm sure the community will be happy for us. So basically, do you guys remember the platform that all of the I want to say it was all of the TIA events were run on, which was it's card.io. They are officially partnering with Ravensburger to run the Ravensburger Play Network. I think that's what it's called, where that's going to be kind of this new system for local game stores where you can see like digital leaderboards of people's points within locals. There's going to be
cool.
They've actually implemented something really, really cool I do have to point out. I don't know when it starts, but they're going to be doing like buy a box promos within the LGSs, which I think this is really, really good because as TCGs grow and the game gets popular, right? If you go to your local game store and you want to buy a box, and let's say, okay, a box is like $130, let's just say. That's what they say. They say, oh yeah, but I could go online or I could go here and get it for like 110, 100. Sure, you could do that, but in this day and age, like, obviously people want to support the local game store, but in my opinion, it's nice to have this other incentive to help the local game store, to incentivize people to actually purchase stuff there. So they're actually going to be adding like buy a box promos. So by supporting your LGS and getting your product there, they will give you specific promo cards for that, which I personally think is a great move. Like it helps both the player because you get some promos and the owner as well to keep the business
Sounds
going.
legitimately innovative. That's cool. I feel like I wouldn't say knew, but I always felt like Ravensburger was going to have their own client that they had more control over. I know a lot of people like to dog on Melee because of some of the issues it's had. Also, maybe like the pricing structure in terms of like, I actually don't know the details. I've just heard people be like, oh, they charge us so much, it's predatory on like a store level. I don't know. So take what I say with a grain of salt / don't listen to me because I'm an idiot. But I actually don't hate Melee. I think that as a out of the box, like we're a new game, we need a tournament software solution. I thought it worked pretty well. I also, you can hate on Melee all you want. I think Melee improved over the course of time. From where we started with the DLCs and where we ended, there was a significant improvement on how that software ran. So, I just want to, I guess give a little bit of a thumbs up to Melee because I didn't hate it, but also it's just natural. Like the game is so big, it's so popular. I figured Ravensburger was going to come out with their own solution. I know they're partnering with somebody, but from what I understand, this is more like it seems like they have more control over this.
Yeah, so they're partnering with the same site that, like I said, does they basically hosted the events, which is they already did kind of locals.
They didn't get blacklisted for the 10Ks?
I have honestly no idea how that partnership occurred because when I saw the partner I was like, wow, that's really, really interesting. But they must have a good reputation in the scene.
Free my boy Pavel, free Pixelborn.
But
did nothing wrong.
Yeah, in terms of the tournament structure changes, which I think this is what you're referring to, Moyen, right? So they are now giving out 40 non-foil set championship promos to anyone that participates in set champs. I don't know if this starts from, the set 7 set champs, the set 8 set champs, but these are going to be given to stores for either pre-registration, and then they're going to be given out to people who participate. You don't have to win anything because there was this whole thing of like, people come to store champs, they don't perform well, they feel like they want to get something. And I think this was this natural progression that a lot of people pointed out that all these non-foil promos would be a good idea, and they've actually gone down that route. However, in going down that route, they have taken out the second place playmat within the set champs kit. So no longer will there be like the finalist one, there will just be the champion one. And from what I've seen, at least from other card games, very other card games have had this like second place one. It's always been there's a playmat for the winner, and like from the other card games I've seen, like there's participation stuff, there is promo cards as you place, and then there's just one playmat. And also naturally people are like, oh, why are you taking it to playmat? Put the playmat back in. Because it's been there for so long, people don't like to see stuff being taken out. They'll rather focus on the things being taken out, like the playmat, and not as much say, oh, it's really great to see all of these promos go in. Also from a cost perspective, right, adding like 40 cards to a kit and also how I can imagine the playmat in every kit as well is not cheap. So
comparatively,
from a cost perspective, it probably makes sense as well. So yeah, I would just say to the community, like, while the finalist playmats have been nice, it's just like a natural progression step. I think I would rather see that go and have people get participation promos, in my opinion. I
think finalist playmats were like whatever, like okay, you get a playmat, but
the only thing I'll say is it's nice because I know some people like them because it doesn't have the. I mean, some people like it because it doesn't have the champion, right? It looks nicer, right?
Mm-hmm.
But
yeah. I feel like you're used to it, so that's why it feels like a loss. But if they had never had it in the first place, it would have made organic sense to me.
Yep.
I guess I can't really speak on it because every time I've been in the finals, I've won.
Yeah, Brennan hasn't played set champ since set 3, right? Yeah.
Okay, but I think I personally am slightly torn because what I liked about the mats was like that at least every match you kind of played for something. But then on the other hand, in my experience, a lot of the time whenever I played set champs finals, yes, we wanted to win, but it wasn't for the mat. No one really cared if it was the champion mat or the non-champion mat. And even worse, a lot of people preferred the non-champion mat because it doesn't have any tags. And then, okay, what are we even playing for? So I guess maybe now you have more to play. I mean, okay, so now you don't get a reward for winning top 4 and losing the finals, but at least now you are actually playing for something in the finals, because if you lose, you don't actually get a match.
Yeah.
Sorry, can you say that one more time?
It also does mean, though, from like the pricing structure of once you get into the top 8, you play your top 8 match, you get to top 4. You play a top 4 match, you get to top 2. So yeah, so once you get to top 8, that's when you get your prize. So then you're playing a match to get to top 4. You're playing a match to get to... So yeah, like you said, Moin, there's now from accommodating the participation and taking away the second place playmat, you now have 2 tiers once you get to top 8 and once you get to top 4, where it doesn't matter. You're only playing for the top prize, which, to be honest, though, for a local event type of thing, it's probably fine. Like, I actually really want to echo what Brendan said. If it wasn't there from the start, how much would people care? If it was just these promos being added, people would just be like, oh, it's just a champion playmat and stuff. And it's sure, it sucks to have this thing be taken away from us, which has been really, really great. But I think it's probably for the better, and I'm sure they've evaluated this deeply. You know what I mean? It's like, how many people come to the set gems? How many people are actually going to get this second place one? How many people, if they get the participation promo, are more inclined to actually join the event, pay for the event, play in future events? So there's always going to be that balance between, competitive pricing, player feedback, and incentive, I suppose. You know what I mean? Because like, the participation promo is incentive for a different type of player than it is incentive for competitive players. The second place playmat is incentive for more competitive players, in my opinion, right? So
it is what it is.
Personally, I don't think. I mean, I'm not a fan of the prize cards ever being extended to top 8. I think that made them largely unappealing to me. But yeah, the big difference is old system. In top 8 you play for something, which was the card. In top 4 you play for the mat. In top 2 you play for the better mat. And now it's like, okay, you could win top 8, top 4, lose finals, and it's kind of the same as if you just lost in top 8.
While I understand, and trust me, I really do understand, because I think, and Brendan actually mentioned this to us as well when set champs were starting, that we all knew that the set 3 set champs were going to be like the glory days, the best time to play set champs. It was the most hype, it was the most fun, and I can really understand what you're saying, Moin, from a competitive player's perspective. I really, really can. But for me, this is just the natural evolution for these types of events. And I think over time, in a sense, and maybe it's why we aren't really interacting, us 3 at least, with the set champs as much as we were, because maybe we don't find it as competitive as we found it before, right? But this is this natural evolution of the set champs are evolving to not really be as competitive as they were, but be the lowest level of a competitive tier event for people that are trying to come into the space. And that way, you want it to be appealing, you want it to feel accessible for that kind of player base, whereas they're not catering for us anymore. To cater for us, it's the DLCs, it's the bigger events. And sure, at the moment, they're not maybe doing a great job for not talking about announcements, not giving us dates and stuff. Sorry, Brendan, I'll let you talk because it feels like you want to say something.
No. It's just go ahead.
Yeah. No, like that's just my opinion. And like I said, while I do agree, I think it's for the betterment of the game. And I'm always trying to look at decisions that TCG companies make now. Like, I think obviously all of us will look at it from player perspectives, but you do need to consider from a business perspective, cost perspective, keeping the overall majority of players happy, you know, for what this event is supposed to be catered for in their minds. So there's always a balance, right? There's always a balance. And I think it's going the way it's supposed to go, in my opinion. So
I don't think Sec Champs were ever catered to us. I think we just made them.
Oh, but that's what I mean. No, we made them at the start, and that's why it was so hype. But it was never. If people thought it was always going to be like that, you're deluding yourself. You know what I mean? You are.
Yeah, but I think it's not just for competitive players. So the one, I mean, yeah, I think in general it's moving in a good direction towards maybe a more casual approach. But I think in general, no matter how casual you are, if you make top 8, I feel like you will still feel bad if you like win some of these matches that don't give any extra reward. So I think in the end it will still give or place some of the onus on the stores themselves to at least say, okay, top 8 gets this amount of packs, top 4 gets this amount of packs, top 2 gets this amount of packs, something like that. And as long as they're doing that, it's probably fine. It's just if they're not doing that, it could still make for some bad blood, some bad feelings between the players.
Yeah. I want to move on to the cards just because I am short on time.
Sure,
and I want to talk about the Duel Links.
Yep.
But you do remind me more when I played a set champs. I remember I won this at champs, and then I was like going to like walk out of the store, like, wait, what about your pricing? I was like, what do you mean? I got my Playmat, I got my cards. They're like, no, you get like 4 boxes as well. I was like, what?
That I will say that has very much seemed to be. I've seen that a lot in American set champs events, and still to this day, I've seen some crazy. You know, here's a box, here's a bunch of packs. All the set champs I've attended, it has very much been like, here's your playmat, here's your promo,
here's a baguette and a cigarette.
I mean, but that is your pricing. So, but yeah, I mean, it's nice when stores give extra pricing, and I do agree with you, Moyne. If stores want to start kind of, you know, formatting their events like that, it makes it feel better for the players for sure. All right, so we're gonna move into the Duel Ink cards. So if you guys want to navigate to the slides within the notes, if you're not following along, the first Duel Ink card that we're going to take a look at is Beast Frustrated Designer. This is a 6-cost uninkable 5/5 card. Dreamborn Hero, Prince Inventor, Quest for 2 with the ability I've had it. So you exert this character, pay 2 ink, banish 2 of your items, and then you can deal 5 damage to a chosen character. So my initial impressions is what I'm going to say is I think this card is pretty bad. It is quite comparable to another card within the game called Launch. That is a 3-cost uninkable action card, which says banish 1 of your items and deal 5 damage to chosen character. So while this is on a body, the requirement means, I mean, it's not even on the play effect, right? So you have to have it survive, you have to pay the 2 ink, you have to banish 2 of your items, and then you have to deal, and then you can deal 5 damage. So the only saving grace I will say about this card is potentially, if we see some absolutely insanely powerful items that do something when banished, maybe we could see this work. But besides that, I think this is a very, very, very bad card. Tell me I'm wrong. Please tell me I'm right.
No. You're you also have to tap it and eat the opportunity cost of not questing. If this card said, pay 2 when you quest, you may banish 2 of your items. Like, I think that would be like a reasonable text it could have, and it just doesn't have that. Yeah, were you gonna say anything? Yeah, I mean, items. So I was also thinking about what you're saying, like items that do things when they're banished. It's like, am I gonna be banishing with this, or would I be banishing them with like other things that have better effects that are easier to do?
Yeah, so no, I'm just proud of Kara. Now
Come on,
no more 0 to hero.
Come
what do you
on,
mean,
man.
bro?
It's no longer falling for like the traps in the cards.
Come on.
This might be like it only took like
history
six
right now.
sets.
No, I mean, but the assessment is completely right? It's okay. So with the items that we have right now, the best items to be banishing, are popsicles, because they at least have some on the play effect. But something like with something like popsicles, this is still giga unplayable. So what we would need is cheap-ish items that have like incredibly powerful effects that only happen when they are banished, that cannot just banish themselves cheaply. So we need like an Exodia deck where we have two expensive items. If both of these are banished, then
15
win the
lower.
game.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which would actually be dope, I think. Like if you had
Alt win cost?
assembling it. Yeah, assembling an Exodia via your discard or something. I don't know. It's just like a different way to interact with the game. Game doesn't interact with the discard pile like too much right now.
Well, Brandon, let's move on to the next card. We'll talk about the discard pile.
How did that happen?
So the next card is Belle, Mechanic Extraordinaire. This is a non-cost inkable 7/7 Floodborn Hero Princess Inventor. This quest for 3. It has Shift 7. The first ability is Salvage. For each item card in your discard, you may pay 1 ink less to play this character using her Shift ability. It also has Repurpose. Whenever this character quests, you may put up to 3 item cards from your discard on the bottom of your deck to gain 1 lore for each item card moved this way. I will actually mention that the previous, for audio listeners, the previous Beast and this Bell card, they are a Dual Link Ruby Sapphire card.
This one's pretty interesting because I feel like when I first saw it, I was like, oh, this has like potential, right? But then you have to read Salvage again, which is for each item in your discard, you may pay 1 less to play this character using her Shift ability, so not just player. I was thinking, okay, just discount her for the 9 cost. And then I was like, maybe. I think that her second ability, Repurpose, is potentially fine. Again, you're gonna have a lot of characters in discard, and in the current edition of Ruby Sapphire, your discard is somewhat interacting with your Tamatoa.
Not characters, by the way, items, right? A lot of item cards.
Sorry, items. Yeah, so the items are interacting with your Tamatoa. They're part of that engine, and I think that if this went into a Ruby Sapphire deck, it would just be a very different deck that utilizes different items as well. It's a lot better than the previous card, in my opinion. But I still think that it's unplayable in the current card pool of Ruby Sapphire.
Yeah, I think even in the current card pool, I don't know if we've any decent bells that this could shift upon. Maybe some will be revealed, but
well, the bell, the one that quests for a lot.
Yeah.
4 cost.
I mean, I don't know if you want to shift on that.
I'm an idiot. Yeah, the 4 cost.
Like
one. Yeah.
you shift on it and then suddenly you quest for less than 5.
Yeah.
Well, you can potentially quest for 6 with this, right? But you have to meet all the conditions to quest for 6 with this, because you get 3 off of the actually character questing, and then you get 3 off of potentially moving 3 item cards.
Yep.
So,
what do you think, Moyen?
Well, it's very explosive, but still you can't like double dip on the high lore character that you want in red blue with a dime. It's like, okay, it's still a 3 lore character. Even on quest, you can gain a little bit more lore than 3. I mean, if you can just if you can play a very long game where at any point later you like threaten the super cheap shift that immediately quests for like for a lot. Oh, it's up to 6.
Up to 6.
Okay.
Yeah.
At first I thought maybe it's like unlimited, and then you have like actually good win condition. But if it's up to 6, I think it's like never cease play. I'm not putting in all that work to just quest for 6 once.
And you're looking at other win conditions like Pirate's Life, the Tamatoa loop. I mean, even Lucky Dime to an extent. It's like, this is pretty underwhelming. And then, like, honestly, just like the shift, and this only discounting the shift. I mean, I think this card would still be maybe not super playable if that didn't say shift, if it was just discount for the amount in your discard. I think it would be more playable, but it would still probably be on the cusp, which is like, I just think this card is kind of bad, to be honest. Yeah, but again, there's item context that could come in the set where there's items that are good here. That's the only way.
Yeah, depends on some of the items. Depends on some of the bell shift targets, but this would need to see a lot of support to get close to being playable.
For sure.
Well, let's talk about the first good card.
So, okay, the next card, you made me laugh, Brendan. Next card is Sven. This is a 5 cost inkable 2/6 Amethyst Sapphire card. Quest for 1. It has Rush and the ability Formidable Glare. When you play this character, chosen character gets -3 strength this turn. Moyen, speak about why Speci was saying this is an absolutely insane card and why he's wrong.
Well, Speci was saying you can just like, you can just play this and then you challenge a small character, and then you also minus strength another exerted character, and then challenge it with something that you already also have on your board. And then also people were comparing it, people were just saying how it compares unfavorably to Elsa, and then the argument that was being brought up was just like, okay, but you can just play this on top of Elsa, but it's not like I mean, that argument doesn't really make sense to me, because you don't need an infinite amount, or like you don't need a lot of 5-cost inkable low strength rushers in your deck. It's like a very niche spot that you don't just you can't just
Elsa
like
also exerts a
include
card.
as many as you want of them.
Elsa's so good, you know.
That's an important part of Elsa is exerting.
Wait, but you were saying, look, we're looking at the first good card now. Do you see something in this, Brandon?
Oh no, I was just trolling Spessy. You know, normal.
Okay.
Yeah, he's trolling.
Normal.
To be honest,
I think that this card is probably better than the other cards. To be fair,
I will say,
Yeah.
this is probably like, out of all the cards we're going to look at today, this is probably top 2, top 3. The cards, like, in context to the rest. But saying that, let's move on to the next one. We're going to be looking at. Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead.
I just wanted to mention that the minus strength ability is also, because we expect this to be only playable in blue purple.
Yeah.
Like it doesn't line up with any removal. All of the strength based remove interactions are basically like Emerald and Ruby with either bounce effects or banish effects, or like under the sea type stuff. But in this it's really only about challenging, so you need to just play a little bit honestly.
Your opponent also has to have 2 characters exerted for this to ever be good, right? Think
Yeah,
about
or one, and you can like double challenge it with both Sven and something else on the board, or just challenge it. Like it's still okay, but yeah.
Yeah, all right. Next one is Jafar Newly Crowned. This is a 4-cost inkable 2/4 that quests for 2. It's an Amethyst Steel card, and it reads, this is not done yet. During an opponent's turn, whenever one of your illusion characters is banished, you may return that card to your hand. So for context, I probably should have shown the other illusion card first, but let's say we didn't know what illusion cards were. What do we think about this card? I'm not a fan of the stats of the card, to be honest. Even comparing this to there's the other Steel Jafar, right? The 4-cost 3/4 that when you banish and challenge, you draw a card. Sorry, Brendan, go ahead.
These cards just have always been bad, right? This reminds me of like the Mickey, the bounce against the brooms back and stuff like that.
Yeah, this actually even reminds me of the set 1 Amethyst starter deck, which is the Dr. Facilier. I know it costs 7, right? But it's like whenever one of your characters dies, bounce it back to your hand, right?
Doesn't the like the Mickey that comes in the PvE box, have something like that with brooms?
Yeah. It's that's also in the starter deck. Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
I think.
Yeah, you're right. But then the additional broom support came in the set that the PvE. Okay, yeah.
Yes, correct. Yes.
Yeah, these cards have always been bad, right? Like these, like what are they? Dude, there was like a name for this archetype in set 1-ish. They call them like swarm decks or something. I don't know. But they've basically always been terrible because you put down this like effectively like what is kind of like a Lord character, and then first of all they're like predicated on kind of on combat. This one says banished, but then they just remove your.
They remove this
character.
one first, exactly. Yeah. And it's very removable. Like these stats are not good.
To me it's one card that I would actually like to compare this to is like Lyle Tiberius Rock, as like this 2/4 stat line that protects your board. But doesn't do a lot when it's like when it is targeted first and banished first. Yes, this is inkable, but it costs 1 more, and Light always has like some sort of impact because of the on-play ability of giving something reckless. So to me there's 2 sides of this. It's one, it doesn't do anything the turn you played. I guess that's not entirely true. You could challenge an illusion character into one of the exerted characters, and if it gets banished, it's during an opponent's turn. Okay, so it never does anything on the play.
Yeah.
And then when they can't remove it, it still doesn't provide tempo. It only provides value. And when they do remove it, then you are very, very sad. So I don't want to put this.
Yeah, the only reason I'd ever play this card is if the illusions had incredible enter the battlefield effects. That if you could actually bounce a few of them. But again, like you said, you can't even control banishing your own illusions to then get them back. You have to wait for your opponent to do it. So I think overall this card is just really, really bad. I'd like to be proved wrong, but I just can't see it.
I'd love to see the aspect of design where this didn't say on your opponent's turn, it did something actually powerful. Because, like, why does it say
that's the only case I could see it, right? Is where if you had a powerful illusion with a good ETB effect, you kill it, you get it back, you play it again, but that's it.
Maybe there's a 0 cost with an on the play, and they go, ba, 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 and rush.
Infinite.
Bomb!
The next card we're going to look at is one of the illusion cards. This is IAGO Giant Spectral Power. It's an Amethyst card. 4-cost inkable 4, 6 quest for 1 with evasive And Vanish, which is a new keyword. Vanish is when an opponent chooses this character for an action, banish them. So this card is obviously overstated for the cost, right? But I honestly think that this card isn't overstated enough, in my opinion. I think this would be potentially a good card if it was a 4-cost 4/6 that quested for 2. I think this would be a very, very, very good card.
Oh, yeah, I think the card would be broken.
That card would be insane.
Yeah, that card would be crazy.
Yeah, because I was thinking, so an evasive the question for 2, yeah, I mean, that'd be crazy. This one is an interesting one, actually.
Really?
I don't think it's actually super clear if this card is garbage or not.
Well, to me, it seems like it has more potential than all the other cards we looked at today.
Sure.
Yeah.
The one thing to point
if
out
it's always so it says when it for an action, so it has to be chosen. So it's not like an AoE thing, right?
Yeah,
it has to be chosen.
And it's an action, right? So you can't do like I play crab, target your IAGO,
Yeah.
it dies. It has to be an action. So
So you're saying it's like always getting 1-for-1s, even if you're trading down on resources, it's always getting 1-for-1, but in combat there's 2-for-1s most likely. Go ahead.
Well, yeah. So this would be at its best in a meta where there's not a lot of steal, because if my opponent's singing Storm Rage on this, and then it just gets banished, and they draw a card, and they're 2-for-1ing me on my 4-in character that didn't have an on the play, then I will cry. And Storm Rage is a very good card. So already it only has like specific meta applications, especially ones where people are trying to quest a lot with evasives, and then you play this and it grabs control of the board. This is like the greatest stat line I've ever seen against like a
genie killer, right? Yeah.
Against the genie, but sure also against like Diablo, other evasive threats. But
What do you think about this as like a tech card for like like a 1 of 2 of, and you bring it into like an RA mirror to like genie kill and stuff?
Right, it's like, and then you see you're playing against a color combination where they have some very game-breaking tools, and then you just like, okay, in this game I have to ink it, most likely. So, overall,
I mean, that's a good point. In Ruby Amethyst mirror matches, how are they targeting this? That's actually very, very true. They don't have any action cards that can just target this, right?
Dragonfire.
Yeah, Dragonfire, which is like
the more expensive one. Okay, yeah, but because there's also a lot of actions that are strength based that don't hit this, like Brawl or maybe even World's Greatest Criminal Mind, where yes, it's bad against actions, but it's not bad against those actions.
So, is there any chance that this card is? I don't think it's like a 4, it's like a 4 thing, but as a tech card that you bring into a metagame that you've reasonably predicted to not have infinite Let the Storm Rage Ons or infinite, whatever, babooms or
Stampedes.
the 1 cost, yeah.
I mean, yeah.
Is this card playable?
You think about even other decks like even Ruby Sapphire. Like Ruby Sapphire doesn't have anything that like any action cards that can easily target this. The only exception is there are some action cards like when you're talking about that Storm Rage on, right? If this card is like anywhere in the meta and it's actually really being played, all the Emerald decks will just start playing Improvise, which is 1 cost, give a character +1 strength, draw a card. They'll just banish your IAGO for 1 and they just draw a card.
Well, yeah, so I guess my thesis would be that would never happen because the IAGO would be a like 1 of 2 of that you would mulligan for in specific matchups to also deal with what is a very specific and somewhat degenerate metagame, which is the Genie metagame, which we kind of exist in right now. I think this card is actually very playable in the current context of Lorcana.
Yeah, so basically by playable, by no means this means like a lot of decks will play. It's like maybe some decks will maybe sometimes play like a few copies of this, but that's all I really am looking for. I just
like a Peter Pan Shadow, in my opinion. Like I see it very similar in terms of like my mulligan strategy.
This being
and,
inkable is actually pretty strong as well, I will say. Like having the flexibility of this for sure.
It's just like another tool to approach certain metagames, and that's fine. I'm happy with this.
Yeah, it is better than I thought after talking through it in context of a 1 or 2 of in a certain
4/6 is just fucking crazy on evasive. Like that's so much. So, all right, Podcana thumbs up. First card.
All right.
Not a dual link. I think it was always dual links were like trash.
The next card and the final card we're going to be talking about today is Lady. Miss Park Avenue. This is a 5-cost uninkable 4/4 quest for 2 Floodborn Hero. It's an Amber Emerald card, one of my favorite color combinations. Shift 3 has the ability when you play this character, you may return up to 2 character cards with cost 2 or less from your discard to your hand. What do you guys think?
They would have to be. I mean, I'm trying to think if you're returning like those one cost uninkables back, and you're just like if that's. But I like those new characters that they just go in your discard. You just play them straight from there.
Like Lilo, yeah.
Yeah, like I just feel like this card at one point would have been very good in Lorcana, where you were like attritioning out these kind of more aggressive decks or somewhat mid-rangey decks. But nowadays, like you remember, like we used to play like this like uninkable Hades and like try to loop back like a one cost, and it was just like, ugh. Those days just feel like they're so far behind us now, where you can just play Lilo out of your discard, or you can potentially have like the one Chernabog, which I don't even think makes it in the list anymore. I think
there's a certain few cards that you might want to get back, but I think this would only go into a very specific build of Amber Emerald, which we haven't seen before. And the cards I'm thinking of are like Go-Go Tamago, right? Getting a Go-Go back to potentially gain a lot of lore could potentially be okay. There's a card that hasn't seen much play right now, which again, I actually don't know if it ever really will, but there's the Honey Lemon, 2-cost Honey Lemon, which you basically have to pay 4 to make them discard a card, but it is something potentially. But this card would only really be good in a deck that clearly we haven't seen exist before, right? Because if it's an Amber Emerald deck, we've only seen 2 variations pretty much. We've seen like the Song, Under the Sea one, and we've just seen like straight up aggro. I don't even know if this fits into straight up aggro. I guess it does technically if your aggro units are dying and then you want to get it back. But I don't know.
Like end your curve at 5. Play this. It's difficult to remove. The next time you play another few active characters to get over the line. But the biggest issue with this to me is, you mentioned like Go-Go Tamago or Honey Lemon. How do you get them to the discard pile? It's like I want them on the board, and then until they're at the time where I have 2 of my 2-cost or less characters at the discard, it's already quite late in the game where they might not be as impactful anymore. So I think also a big thing about returning low-cost characters at the later stages of a game to your hand is usually low-cost characters are impactful in the earlier stages of the game. And there's very little low-cost characters that are also impactful later in the game. They need to do maybe something on the play, or maybe they need to have rush. But probably one of the best use cases for this could be shift 3 or maybe pay 5. And if you get 2 cards, you just take 2 inkables, and then now you have 2 extra cards that you can actually ink and play some better cards. I just think the biggest issue is reliably at the time where I want to play this. I don't think we will really have 2 characters in the discard unless we're playing like against the discard deck or discarding ourselves.
You'd have to play 1 cost turn 1 cost turn 2. One of them would have to be a lady that shifts onto this. You'd have to kill off your 2 1 costs, shift the lady, get the 2 1 costs. That is so specific if you want like ultimate Giga value at the start, right?
I mean, that would probably be like the nut draw. So
is it even the nut draw? Like, usually my 2 1-drops quest, and maybe my opponent did enough so that they can challenge one of them.
And if they didn't, it's good, right? Like that's a good problem to have. I think this is like the most medium card we've seen. I don't see it seeing play in the current era of Lorcana, but it's fine. I mean,
yeah, would have maybe no, it wouldn't have seen play set 1 because you would have had to play Amber Emerald. Or maybe Amber Emerald was like okay, but like I think this is not good enough.
The interesting thing I do find though with I want to talk about these dual links in general is it really gives the perspective of what I think the designers think these 2 ink combos are doing together. It's like I actually do think that the Sven we saw in Blurple really does incorporate what Blurple tends to do, which is kind of generate bodies, have good tempo on board, make good trades, control the board through tempo. So that's why the Sven kind of makes sense in this. I'd be curious to see, right? Like, okay, this Amber Emerald card, it's kind of okay. Maybe it's in more of an aggro deck, like you said, Moin. Maybe that's really what they think Amber Emerald is. And in my mind, I'm like, God, I want to see an Amber Emerald card that's like a 6 song or something I can put in my Under the Sea deck, right?
Let me ask you guys a fundamental question.
Go ahead.
Sorry to cut you off, but just because I'm running really short on time here, I just want to ask you. So when it comes to dueling cards, should they be more powerful or less powerful than normal single ink cards?
What do you think, Moin?
Well, I thought we had talked about this before. I thought we were all in agreement that they need to be more powerful to like actually give me reason to try out like an underappreciated color ink color combination.
But in the ink combinations where an ink combination is powerful already, it still has to be powerful, right?
It's
Yes.
same thing, I think,
Yeah.
right? Like same concept.
Mm-hmm.
It's like the less decks a card is playable in, like the more powerful it has to be, because otherwise its use cases are going to be too narrow.
And I actually don't think we've seen that. I think we've seen more narrow and in general less powerful cards. It's a small sample size, right? But especially the Ruby Sapphire cards, they were extremely narrow. They were hoop jumpy. If like to put a scientific term on it, you had to jump through a lot of hoops, and that's pretty much the opposite of what you want to do in Lorcana these days, is be jumping through hoops.
To put the Brandon term on it, they were like magical Christmas land cards.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. So it's interesting. There's obviously going to be a lot more in the set. Okay, small point as well. All the dual ink cards we saw were for ink combinations that are good.
Ooh.
You guys there's no bad ones. Like there's no but it's just funny they picked those ones. There's no Ruby Steel. There's no Sapphire Emerald. Like there's no Amber Sapphire. I want to see those too. So
yeah, of course. Yeah. February 10th, Brendan. February 10th. Yeah.
February 10th. But yeah, so far, best card is probably IAGO by quite a bit.
It's not the dual ink.
It's the only non-dual ink card.
Yeah, I think IAGO, it would be a serious consideration for me if I was showing up to a tournament where there was going to be a lot of Amethyst decks to bring in a couple of IAGOs in my deck and aggressively mulligan for them to potentially win something like the GENIE Mirror.
Yeah.
I think it would be an actively good card to have. And then if all else equal, nothing else changing in the metagame, I would like to have that card.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, that being said, I think it's still plausible that in the upcoming metagame, the meta might have changed in a way where it will not ever see play. But right now, I think it's a good tool to have.
Yep. All right.
That's a big W, by the way, to see a single playable card.
One out of 6.
1 out of 6.
Yeah.
It is still pretty good.
Fire.
Yeah, so as we are short on time, I'm going to breeze over it because I think we'll be covering it a lot more next week once we have the results. But general DLC Melbourne predictions, guys. Like, how do you think the meta? Do you think the meta's changed much since NA Champs? Do you think we're going to see a very, very similar meta? Like, it's actually very strange, right? Because we haven't really seen Oceania's preferences in, like, usually within Europe. Oh, people like Emerald Amethyst a bit more than the Americans. Our Americans are traditionally like green steel more, or whatever. So we actually don't know that sentiment for the Oceania players, but I would very much, if you want to be very, very safe, I'd say it's going to play out similarly to NA Champs.
Yeah, I think so. It's also, this is going to be a DLC, right? This is not a nationals level tournament, a invite only tournament. So the metagame I think is going to be slightly different. That being said, if you're going to attend Melbourne, I think you should be extrapolating from the most recent tournaments, even being the invite-only tournaments. And if I was going to Melbourne, I would probably just play like a fundamentally powerful deck, one of the best decks, something like Ruby Sapphire, or even a Ruby Amethyst, trying to target Ruby Sapphire. I think that's very fair. There's also the Diggy Hole, like the Amber Steel, which are quite good. I probably wouldn't be on like a songs list. Amethyst Emerald might be a nice pick, or even some sort of aggro deck to come into this somewhat under-matured metagame or something like that. It's basically the same story as the previous metagames. And the story of this most recent set, I believe, was we had a group of very powerful decks, and then arguably what was best deck in the format in the form of Ruby Sapphire. But a lot of these tournaments came down to accurately predicting the metagame that would show up in the group of those best decks, and then appropriately tweaking your deck to have tools to deal with that. And I think the players that did that succeeded the most, and the most often.
Yep, I would agree. And yeah, like you won't really have that field as much within a DLC, like you said, because there's not going to be a pool of these kind of best players so far. But that being said, I've seen a lot of people flying in for this event from Europe, from NA,
still would be the vast minority though. So it's going to be unknown, but I think that the most recent set was I think comes down to those fundamentals where the best decks in the format are established, but there is still a lot of room to flex your creativity, both in metagame prediction, but also adjusting your last few cards in your deck to exploit whatever metagame you might show up, or to maybe not do that. Maybe the best thing you could do, because it's an unknown metagame, is just not over-tech your deck and not sort of get lost in the sauce and just come with something that is consistent, powerful, and good.
Yep, I think I agree. Moin, final thoughts on what you expect from the tournament?
Yeah, well, I think it's a little bit of an open field again, but I think with the meta, it's very, very well established, and I think Red Blue has established itself as the best deck of the format. To me, not everyone needs to agree, but I think from all the testing that I've done, I also think that it does just slightly have the edge over even the other strongest decks of the format. So I if I was going, and I wish I was, but I couldn't, I would definitely be on Ruby Sapphire.
Yep.
What deck would you have bought, Cover?
I probably would have brought Amethyst Steel, I think. I would have felt pretty confident with it. I think it's a pretty good bring. And even into the field of all of the Ruby Sapphires.
Amethyst Steel?
Yeah, probably something like Zach's build, I think.
So no one-drop Maleficence?
Yeah, I mean, I know Moyen's always said about it for the Ruby Sapphire matchup, but maybe not none. I'd definitely consider it, but I think very much towards a build of what Zach brought. I feel quite comfortable with that deck from a lot of testing that I did previously, and then testing with the deck since Zach played it. I played out a few little things as well. So, yeah, I feel confident enough on the deck, and if I just practiced against Ruby Sapphire enough, I feel like I could be okay. But
yeah, plus against like not great Ruby Sapphire players,
yeah,
you
the
can
field is
really
way
find
more
without
open, right?
resistance.
Yeah, for sure. All right, yeah, with that, if you guys enjoyed this week's episode of the podcast, be sure to leave us a review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, your local podcast platform. It means so much. We're so close to 5k subscribers. Please hit the subscribe button if you enjoyed the video. There's a video version of this over at youtube.com/@Podcana podcast. Twitters are @BrennanAPG, @Moyen_HS, and @Kawatek_CG. Thank you guys so much for watching.
Wait,
guys.
leave us questions on YouTube, please.
Leave us questions. Catch you guys in the next one.